So, hello and welcome to another episode of Flying High with Flutter. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. Today I have Chris Kreymborg on the show. He is the creator of PlaceMyApp or PlaceMy.app if you go looking for it online. Don't get confused with PlaceMyApp.com. Totally different business out there website. Welcome, Chris. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm great. Thank you. If I may start with a little compliment. I really like your podcast intro, the little guitar riff that's playing in the beginning. It takes me right back to my late teenage, early adult years when I was playing in metal bands. And that's the kind of stuff we played, really.
Yeah, you know what? I've been thinking about changing it. Once in a while having a change
No,
is
no, no,
good
no.
to have. No, never change it.
Don't change it. Well, did you play it yourself or how did it?
We were looking online for some free music to use for the intro, like some unlicensed
Mhm.
stuff. And yeah, this song came up and I was like, that's the one I want because like some of the podcasts I listen to, like the one I really like to listen to that's no longer on anymore, or one of the ones, they used a guitar one, but it was like a
Mhm.
MIDI style of like one of the AC/DC songs. And I was like, okay, I like this one because some of the other ones I listen to, like I don't know what it is, but they want to sound. This is my interpretation again. It's like I feel like they want to sound smart or something, so they
Mhm.
playing like piano at the beginning, and I'm like, this just puts
Ah,
me into
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like a not so interested mood. Like I want to be pumped when I listen to a podcast, and I'm more like, I'm more into it. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm more awake at least.
Okay, interesting. I don't know if I would call myself pumped necessarily, but I know the style you're going for, definitely. Yeah.
At least not piano. I don't know. Piano just turns me off, I think.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. No, I really like it. It's just this little riff. Sounds a bit like, I hope that's no offense to anyone, sounds a little bit like Bullet for My Valentine, which I used to listen to a lot. And it just brings me right back into this era of my life.
Well, I'm happy to hear that because I don't hear too many people talking about it, about the intro. So that's why I was thinking, like, well, maybe I can have a change someday. Because I changed another intro I had for my other YouTube channel, just because yeah, like I said, once in a while having a change is nice. Like all these companies that have been around for a long time, IBM, etc. They change their logos and all that every, I don't know, 30 years or so. So it'd be nice just to have a change once in a while.
Yeah, you could go for the minimalist style. Isn't everybody going for the minimalist style? And maybe just have, I don't know, what could you do more minimal about a guitar intro? Just the guitar, no drums, no nothing anymore. Go more
Good.
minimal.
Yeah. Yeah, I know actually know quite a lot of people in the music business, so I can always ask if they have some kind of idea. Some people that compose music.
Nice.
So he actually composed my other YouTube channel, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I have to think about it. I don't know. I think, but how about the logo? What do you think about the logo? Seems kind of nice. Minimalist, I guess, to a certain extent.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I mean, the colors definitely speak Flutter, which I like. It's a bit rounder than the usual Flutter design language, I guess. But I mean, you're not Flutter, you're your own podcast. I like it. Definitely speaks Flutter to me.
Yeah, that's it's good to hear. I like to hear the feedback because you don't really know how something is until somebody lets you know to a certain extent.
Yep, I agree. I absolutely agree.
But your Place My App, right? Your logo is quite interesting. It's actually similar to mine. Should I call this patent infringement or something? Copyright infringement?
Give me a sec. I just have to open Photoshop for a quick second. Yeah, true. I think so. The cover of the YouTube live announcement said that I'm a software developer and UI designer. Um, I wouldn't. Uh, yeah, I do UI design. That's true. Also, in my current job, I do UI design, but I've become a UI designer by accident, so to say. And every time I design a new UI, it's usually these shades of blue that I use. Maybe because I'm influenced by Flutter. I don't know. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, they use similar colors that Flutter uses in their design language. Um, I guess I understand what you want to say. Yeah,
Well, it's rounded on the corners, and obviously you're missing the middle stem.
true. Basically, only the one F stroke is missing. Yeah,
It's
correct.
interesting. I mean, you came up with the logo yourself, I'm guessing, right?
I did. Yeah, I did. Just because I find it's a big pain point to get logos, and I went down several pathways from the Wix logo creator to paying somebody on Fiverr, but I don't know if you've ever done something like this, like if you've ever gone down these rabbit holes. Um, it never, or it rarely turns out the way you really imagine it to be. Um, I really wouldn't call myself a logo designer. I do UI designs, as I said, but um, yeah, I literally just did this in Figma, I think. So I wouldn't really call Figma even a real logo design tool, but it was enough to at least create something really simple, like a little bit of text and a few small design elements. That's fine. I can't really go beyond that, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing that's interesting too is that you place more emphasis on the app part, right? I mean, how do you even come up with the design? Because your design is quite simple, but how do I say? It's simple, but it's not bad. It's just like you see that you emphasize the word app, so I'm guessing it's you're just trying to say it's really about the app part of the whole process, right?
Yeah, when I found the name PlaceMyApp, I thought that's perfect because I wanted to create something for app developers to showcase their app, basically. So what PlaceMyApp does, all in all, is just place your mobile app inside of a mobile frame. So you have a mock-up of your app in an iPhone or a Google Pixel, and that's basically it, I think. So you can choose what frame you want. You upload your screenshot, and then you can download a version with a mock-up of your app. So no, not with a mockup of your app. You can just download a final picture and you have a mockup of your app. That's what I want to say. So I guess this is a tool very strictly designed for app developers, strictly created for app developers. But also when I thought about the name, I thought about the route I want to go down with Place My App, and that ticks all the boxes. For example, it would be great if one day you don't only have the option to place your app in a phone. So to start off with, you could maybe have a laptop or a iPad or maybe a web browser or something that you can show off your software. But it would be great if you had a resource to create all of your graphic design assets in there. For example, your app logo. And I know there's a bunch of logo creators, not logos, sorry, your app icon. That's what I want to say. I know there's a lot of icon creators out there, but I guess it would be useful to have like nearly a suite of programs that do a bunch of jobs for you. And if I go even further, my end game would be that you can create your App Store screenshots with all the needs for your App Store screenshots in there. So different sizes for Apple, for example, different languages that you have to upload on the App Stores. So yeah, this is just it still says Place My App beta if you go to it. So this is just an absolute MVP, I'd say, to see if there is need for this sort of app, if somebody will use it, and if I should continue going down this path, really.
So if I were to use this tool, like what would be kind of the style? Like I just need one screenshot, and I would just upload that, and then I could download different screenshots from there. What an app would look like, so I can use it for promotional materials.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing you can do now. You just upload one screenshot, and you choose if you want to have an iPhone 14, an iPhone 14 Pro, and I think the other one, I don't have it open right now, and I don't have it in my mind right now, but I think the other one is a Google Pixel you could choose, maybe even a Samsung Galaxy. I'm not even entirely sure. So I did place a few of the recent I did create a few of the recent phones in there. So you would basically, that's the stuff people use for either promotion materials for their landing page for an app, maybe even for App Store screenshots, stuff like that.
Yeah, I seen you have 14 Pro, 14 S22 for Galaxy, and Pixel 7. Those are just four. Oh, have you gotten any more requests recently or no?
Not really. I think what would be more helpful would be different device types, really. So an iPad, um, maybe a laptop, maybe 3D mockups. That's something I have looked briefly into, but I haven't really touched yet, actually. But it should still be possible with Flutter. So the way it works currently is that when you choose a device, all the parts of the device frame are made with Flutter widgets. So it's all just containers, sized boxes, stuff like that. So this gave me the opportunity to make these individual parts of a mockup really customizable. So you can change colors, you can toggle some things on and off. And I could even add more customization features in the future. So I think there are a few 3D libraries for Flutter out there. I just briefly touched the topic, but it should be possible to upload. I think in that case, I would need 3D models maybe. Then it becomes a bit of a question of how customizable will these 3D models be from Flutter itself. So that's one of my next topics I want to touch, really, to see how easy it would be to build, or if it's possible at all, and how customizable it would be.
Now, how did you actually make these devices? Like, what kind of widgets are they?
So I think 99% of the time I just use the decorated box. I don't know if you ever worked with the decorated box, but it's just like a container with a little bit less stuff that you need. So essentially, if you my first step was done in Figma. I designed these devices up in Figma the way I wanted them to look like, and I know that most of the stuff I do in Figma I can replicate exactly like that in Flutter, because when you design something in Figma, all you really do is place one shape on top of another shape, like a rectangle, a circle, triangle, whatever, and then you give it a shadow and a gradient maybe. And in a nutshell, that's basically UI design, right? It's not really more than that. Shadows, colors, and forms, and you can do all of that in Flutter. So I can just look at my Figma design, at the different layers of my Figma design, and I can recreate every layer with a Flutter widget. So everything you see in there could be recreated with a container, because it gives you all the stuff you need. You just you have a stack and you place containers on top of each other, and you end up, if you style them correctly and if you give them paddings and shadows, you end up with a phone mockup if you do it right. The only one challenge I had was I had to create an inner shadow, and I actually had to use a package from pub.dev for the inner shadow. That's the glow that you can even adjust. Oh, is it called glow gloss, I think? So there's little light reflection essentially that makes the device frame look a little bit more three-dimensional. That's basically a white inner shadow. It's no rocket science, all of that stuff. It's just shadows and boxes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like these. You can get the buttons on the side, which is quite interesting, and the notch or the I guess the sorry, what's it called? Dynamic island for iPhone.
Dynamic
Yeah,
Island, yeah.
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of my things I want to add in the future is just the ability to also toggle stuff like the buttons on and off, and um, maybe create a more generic generic phone by removing the outer buttons, removing the dynamic island, and then you just have a generic phone frame if you don't want it to be so branded. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely pretty cool stuff. So now, obviously, this must have been something to scratch one of your itches, right? So you actually still use this yourself at your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So do I'm just someone who always needs a project to work on, and so naturally I've just created quite a few apps over the years. But I also so that's one use case for myself when I create an app. And every time I created an app, I had to create these mockups for my app. I was searching online for these mockups for Adobe XD or for Figma or whatever, and was never really satisfied. And it was just a painful process for me. So that just solves a problem for me. But also, I'm a full-time software developer. We also make an app. Um, and it just helps me in my actual day job sometimes, because I also make our website. It's a small startup. I'm the only developer, so I basically do the app development and our website, and my boss is just making sales and implementation work. So this helps me and my boss in our daily work, really.
Yeah, but there's quite a few other tools that could do similar things, right? Is there one that just couldn't do it the way you wanted to? Or I know some of these are probably paid, I believe.
Yes, so I think yes, that's one of the biggest differences to PlaceMyApp. It's free, and also most of the tools don't give you this level of customization, and also not this potential level of future customization. Um, like I said before, there's a lot of stuff I want to add to make these things even more customizable. They give you, most of the time, they give you maybe the option to change your color, but sometimes they are just like static graphic assets that your screenshots are placed in. So that's one thing I could see PlaceMyApp have a bit of an advantage in the future. But to be honest, it was also just a bit of an, like you said before, it was interesting for me to see if I could build something with Flutter that's more than just write and read data from into a database. Um, it was a little bit of a challenge to create this graphics design style tool, especially when you think about this canvas in the middle. Initially, I spent a little bit of time thinking about how I could create this canvas where you can drag the phone around and can zoom into the mockup itself. But then it turned out to be quite easy with Flutter's what is it called, interactive viewer. Yeah, so I really itched to create something that's a little bit different than your typical have a form, post some data to a database, and then retrieve the data again.
I just noticed that actually Facebook has a lot of these things for free. Have you seen that? It's, designed off yeah. Have you seen that before?
Oh yeah. They do some stuff for. I think they have quite a extensive resource set for their ads now. Is that for ads or is it? Yeah.
I don't know, it says, design.facebook.com/tools and resources/devices, and it seems like they have a ton of these different things. They got, iMac Pro, iMac 24-inch, just iMac, Retina,
And
iPhone.
maybe I can copy some stuff from them.
Yeah, you can probably steal some of these or at least kinda get the you know, or how do you say
The
that?
ideas, yeah, the
Sorry, let's
designs,
not use the word steal, right? Let's use the music word, sample these.
inspiration.
Yeah, inspiration. Yeah, that's the PC word to use, right? Inspiration. But yeah, these, I totally forgot about these things because to
Yeah,
me, like yeah, I mean, I don't really
yeah.
have to make stuff like this. This is interesting. They also have Dell Ultrasharp HD, screen. Okay, and they get really out there.
That's
Okay.
very oddly specific, but okay.
Yeah, that's what I was surprised about. Microsoft Lumia 950? I mean, you don't know if you need that anymore. If you take a time machine, you might need that.
I'm sure they must have identified a use case for it in order to create it. It wouldn't be random that somebody just said, "I'll do that now."
They
Um,
got Nokia if you need it.
is Nokia even around still? I don't even know.
That's why I was a little bit surprised. I think they might still be somewhat around. I
Yeah,
saw yeah, but it'd be interesting if they had, like, really old, like, Razer or something here.
yeah. Interesting that you just said you don't really have to build stuff like this. If you think about your typical um, solo indie developer, they might be on their own and they might not be very good with graphics design and UI design, and they might not even have Adobe XD or Figma or whatever installed, and they might stumble upon PlaceMyApp and just think that it's the perfect thing for them to just make their screenshots look a little bit nicer. So I guess there's quite a few use cases you can find if you start digging into it.
No, it's not the perfect tool for me, for more than one reason. Like, one is, like, I never really have to
Thanks.
make this kind of stuff. No, it's no offense, right?
No, no,
Like, I
no. I'm
never have
just
to do this kind
joking.
of stuff, and
Yeah,
also I have a full-time designer that can do this stuff for me,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
don't
So
think
you're in a fortunate position.
yeah, I'm in a fortunate position, but then again, like, there's a reason why I asked you to come on is because I thought it was
Mhm.
interesting, and there may be people who actually want to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying it I mean, if I thought it was useless, then we wouldn't even be talking, right? So, let's just be direct,
I was just pulling your leg.
yeah, yeah, I know, but I also wanna make that part clear, right? I'm not here to dismiss your work. I think
Yeah,
it's interesting and curious why you made it and also curious how you made it, right? Because there may be somebody who
yeah,
maybe wants to we call it take the ball, I guess, like, start where you are and then maybe add on to it and make it even more interesting, more unique.
yeah.
Are
Absolutely.
you actually bringing on, open source help to help out and try to add more features or nobody's kind of asked for anything like that?
No, not at the moment, to be honest. It was. stale for a little while. I created it last year in December, I think, roughly around the time December 2022. And then we had a bigger project, a bigger personal project. We just moved, and I had to move a family of 6, which was a bit of a um, adventure. So just because I have 4 kids, um, so I didn't really have much time in the last weeks and months to work on personal projects. Now that that's done, I definitely want to dig into it, and just I do have a little bit of a roadmap, as I told you before, and just want to see how I should prioritize stuff. I when I posted it on Reddit initially, I think that's how you guys found me too. I got quite some great feedback. For example, one guy said, it would be great if you could just type in the URL of your website and it would just load your website inside the font frame, which I didn't even think about that, but it's a great suggestion, and I think it's easy to build. So I think that's one of the next things I'll try. Flutter has a, what is it called, web view. So it should be really straightforward to build this sort of stuff. Yeah, so next for me is just prioritizing the roadmap a little bit and see what I have on there, and maybe gather a bit more feedback. That's what you said in the beginning when I talked about your podcast intro. I think feedback is just one of the most important things you could get as a developer, especially as a solo developer who has just coded along in his own head for a while. Yeah, so if anyone sees this and wants to give me some feedback and wants to suggest some features, I'm more than open for it, and I'll pick up some work on PlaceMyApp very soon, I guess, now that we're all set in our new house.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about what would be useful. I mean, the biggest thing for me that's always a pain is like automatically generating these screenshots
Yes.
for the store, right? Especially the Apple App Store is the worst.
Yeah, they're so pedantic with their pixel sizes. It's crazy. I know exactly what you mean. Like
Yeah, they say
if you
these specific devices we need screenshots, and you're like, ah,
yeah, even just if you want to just create an iPhone app, you have to already upload 2 different sizes. So you have to design these and render these somehow, or export these in the exact right pixel sizes. And then if you want to do multiple languages, you have to upload your screenshots in multiple languages as well. Now it just happens to be that on Reddit, I think 2 days ago, I saw a post, must have been either Flutter community or Flutter dev or Flutter help or something, where somebody created something very similar to this, and I wanted to take a closer look because it looked very promising. So maybe something like that is out there already. We'll see.
yeah, I know that there's a way that you can do this with Fastlane. They can somehow spin up your app and take the pictures that you need.
Yeah.
I just remember like for one of my clients where we didn't have a mobile app, and then we had to have one because we wanted to get away from Strava for polling fitness data.
Hmm.
What so what he did was he had his designer friend mock up all the screens for us to submit. He said, "Okay, give me the densities and everything." But he used for both the Apple App Store and Google Play, he used the same phone, which was some random
Hmm.
Google phone, some random Android phone, and Apple was like, "No, you cannot. You have to use an iPhone in your screenshots. Sorry,
Yeah, they're very
denied."
specific sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, which is it's understandable, like, if you think about it, but when you're in a rush to get the app out, and this is the thing that's blocking you, it's like, "Dude, this is ridiculous."
Yeah, and wouldn't it be great if you had a tool where you can just design one App Store screenshot and it would give you, you can choose the device that you want to have for the Apple Store, and you can choose a device that you want to have for the Android Store, and you can choose which languages you want to do. And you click one download button and it spits you out all of these files at once that you need. That's kind of a little bit my vision. If that, like, if I ever get that far, we'll see. But that would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it like, if yeah, to me, I see this as kind of like the foundation of something that could be much more interesting, but how to get to where I'd like to go is totally something else, like, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, because like when if you go to like the store, you can see the stylized, like the phone is not in the center or not the whole thing. It's towards the bottom, and on top you have text and stuff around. Like, and if you can swap those out, yeah,
Yeah.
that would be more about what I'm looking for, and also generating like the actual screenshots.
Yeah.
And actually, the one tip for people at home, sorry, I just want to say this before I forget. I don't think we've changed the app significantly, but we never updated the screenshots for Apple, and they never asked us anything, which I thought was very interesting. They never actually take a look at it, but, it's probably good to update that because you may piss off some people when they when they try to open up your app and see it's different.
Yeah, true. But it's a very common problem for me as well. Just because I can't be bothered again, where did I place my designs again for these screenshots? And then I need new phone mockups, and somehow I don't really know how I created these again. So yeah, that's a very common problem. So if you would log into PlaceMyApp and you just have all your screenshot projects in there, and you could just quickly update them, that would be great.
Yeah, but, but you also kind of let me just let me seamlessly transition us to another topic that you want to talk about. Yeah, ideation, right? I can imagine that, you'd mock up your stuff in Figma or Photoshop or whatever, kick out a screenshot, put it into the phone, and then kind of use that as a way to show off an idea of what you want to work on, right? Is that also something that you use this for?
Potentially, that's not really how I ideate. I'm somebody who's very hands-on. So when I have an idea, I try it out. For example, jumping back to PlaceMyApp, I just played around at first a little bit, like played around with, can I export a widget stack as an image in Flutter? So that's more of the I didn't talk about this idea with anybody. I just jumped right onto it. I just jumped right onto these different concepts, tried them out, um, tried out how I can create a color chooser in Flutter, like this color picker thingy where you can change your device colors. So yeah, the reason why I put ideation and creativity on the topic list was just because I come from a rather I would say I have quite a track record of doing creative work, and I feel like sometimes the creative aspect of creating an app um, and the ideation aspect of creating an app becomes a bit too understated. Everybody talks about what technology to use, how to build this, but nobody talks about actually, if you have an idea, why don't you play around with it a little bit? Why don't you try it out instead of just overthinking it, and then maybe never ending up building it? That's where I see some people fail in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you keep thinking about it, that's one thing, but usually you have to have some type of end goal and have to have some kind of thing that you actually want. Because sometimes you have these, I mean, I can only talk about people coming to me with ideas because that's what I usually get. Is they say, "Oh, I want something kind of like this, but I'm not too sure." I mean, and that's when you start to get into some problems because then you don't know what's the end goal or what are you actually working towards, right?
So these are customers who would be coming to you actually with a rough idea, but they're not really sure what it should look like in the end.
Yeah, but also it's like, okay, I want to have a contact us form. Okay, why? Who's going to be contacting you? Like you start
That's a
asking this kind of
fantastic
question.
question to ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they're like, I don't know, and you're like, well, let me just ask you a serious question, right? How often do you use the contact us form? Oh, like never. Like, and can you describe some websites that you've go to or that you've seen recently that have a contact us form? Like, just giving an example, and they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, actually, maybe I don't actually need that because like everybody uses WhatsApp. It's like, well, what about just a contact us link like in the about section or at the bottom, or we put them in some key places where it's like you start doing like about your product, and that should usually entice the person to contact you, right? Oh yeah, that's a good idea. It's like, okay, then let's because that putting the link in is like dead simple, right? But building the contact us forms requires a lot more work. It's not like crazy amount, but it's more in comparison.
That's actually a very interesting topic you just touched on. As I mentioned before, I'm working for a startup here, and we already, I wouldn't say messed up, but we already, our very first approach to our product already failed. And we found that one of the reasons it failed was that we um, didn't ask this why question enough. So we were assuming that customers want this. We were assuming that our customers need this feature and that feature and want to do it that way. But we didn't actually talk to them enough. And that's exactly what you just said right now. You talk to your customer, you ask them, why do you need this? And in our case, our users, had a bunch of features that they never used, but what they really needed wasn't in the app because we never asked them. So when we revamped our idea and built a new product, we actually tried to build it more customer driven. So we built a very basic MVP and then put it out there for people to use, and then worked off their feedback really, to, instead of coming up with a bunch of stuff that they might never use, we just waited for their feedback and asked for their feedback even to create a little bit of a roadmap. Just like I said before with PlaceMyApp, the feedback I got from Reddit, even that little feedback already helped me to look at it from a different perspective and to see what people actually would like to see in there.
Well, mostly like what I'm looking for is that people just try to think about whatever and to just ask for whatever because they think it's what they should have.
Yeah, but if you have 2 or 3 or 4 people asking for one feature, then you already know you might be up to something.
Yeah, maybe. But then you also need to ask, what is it that you want to do with this, right? So, because sometimes that they have, how do I say?
They have a solution instead of a problem that they present you. That's what I found is sometimes the crux about these things. They come to you with a solution. They say, they say build a contact form. There was a great example actually. They tell you build a contact form, but their problem is really just, I want people to contact me. And you are the professional who's the right person to come up with a solution in this case.
Yeah, that's a good point. They come with a solution, right? Instead of coming with the problem.
When they're not the professionals in that case.
Yeah, or even the end goal, right, is what I would call it. Because it'd just be, okay, I guess that's a good point. That would be a problem, is I want them to be able to get in touch with me, right? Yeah, that is the problem. How do we do that? Well, it depends on your demographic too, right? Because like for me, I if I get a phone call, I feel weird already. Most of the phone calls I get are people
I don't answer my phone if I don't know the
are
number.
just not the phone calls I want to have. It's like, do you want money? Do you want to? I get a lot of those recently. It's like, do you want to borrow money? It's like, who the hell are you, and why would I want to just accept money from a loan from somebody I've never talked to and never solicited for? It's like the weirdest part to me. but in any case, it's like, yeah, what I need to, yeah. So then giving a phone call is probably not the right thing. So you're always looking for like the lowest what gives you call the initiative from the user, right? So clicking a WhatsApp link and bringing up WhatsApp, I think, is easier than clicking an email. And then the problem too is that not everybody uses the default mail client. For me, I use Spark on my phone.
Same
I don't like the default one. So that and even if you use the mail to link, I think it still opens up the regular one. So then I just
you can set it up differently though. Do you have an iPhone or Android?
I do. Maybe I didn't set it up or something weird, but
you can now choose your default mail client on iPhone. Yeah.
I'll have to take a look, but I remember it being an issue at least before, and I was like, "This is annoying." So I'd have to end up having to hold down the click and then copy the mail in order to do it. So I'd end up doing it later.
Breaking a problem down to the simplest solution, that's something you just said, is what I feel I'm not necessarily the best at, but I'm very blessed with my boss at my startup, for example. He's always challenging me. I tell him the way, or I show him mockups of how I want to build something, and he's usually very, very good at drilling down whatever I want to build to the really simplest MVP solution, and then just say something like, okay, let's just implement this and wait what the customers say, see if they actually need the other little knickknacks that you wanted to build in there, see if they even need this and that feature. So I think that's a skill, really. You have an idea in your head and then drilling it down to the absolute basic minimum to validate the idea you have is a little bit of a skill, I guess. And it helps to have someone else look over what you're trying to build to help you ask the right questions, just like you said before. Ask the why.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of times why is like, because a lot of times people try to just throw in what I call busy work. That's really what it comes down to. At least in my line, it's just like, I want this. Why? And most of the time they never have a reason, which is even more interesting. It's like, because we need that. It's like, well, why do you need that you never get an answer for?
Yeah. When I learned Flutter about 2018, I think, I learned it with a course from Angela Yu on Udemy. Probably lots of people know this name because that was one of the best-selling courses on Udemy back then. And one thing she said really really got stuck in my head until today. She said, when you build a new feature, ask yourself, am I building this because somebody needs it, or am I building it because it's smart? Because it makes me look smart that I was able to put this in there. And I think a lot of times you might find that you're trying to show how smart you are by building something in your app. But it might not be really it doesn't have any value for anybody, really. It's just showing off you can do this. And this one concept that she tried to communicate in her course really just got stuck in my head until today. And I try to ask myself this sometimes.
The why, right?
Yeah, am I really just building this because it makes me look smart?
Yeah, I think so. I guess at the beginning of my career, maybe I did some stuff like that. Nowadays, I tend to be more practical. It's like, well, what can I yeah, what's the easiest way I can build what I want to do? But I mean, if I build it for myself, of course, you you build something kind of rickety, right? But if you're building it for other people, you're like, well, how can I make this like easier to use so like I don't get somebody doing the wrong thing? It's like, can I just have drag and drop with a couple buttons? I don't want to let them input stuff. I want them to just do something dead simple, so that way there's no issue. Like for instance, oh, here's a good point. I forgot what it was, but we had to. Oh, I think it was something like you need to convert these screen share files or something from one format to another for something. I think I was recording to MOV, but I needed them to be MP4 for my editor to deal with. And obviously, I can do that very quickly with FMMPG using command line. But I don't want to be the one to do that because it's such it's no offense, right? But my time is much better spent like I'm looking for new clients or whatever else. There's things that I can do and need to do at sometimes that I can't pass to somebody else. But asking somebody to run a script is definitely easier. But this is something that I think that the editor should be doing and not a programmer, right? Because a programmer, okay, here's a bash script, run it, but that's not also good use of his time, right? He should be doing other things. This is related to editor. So like, okay, can you make a Flutter app? So ask the developer for, an hour of his time to make this Flutter app for desktop where it's like, can you just drag and drop a file and then this thing will output a file, same name, but just different extension. And it's been changed in FFmpeg. That is like one example where it's just like, well, I mean, how do you get drag and drop wrong? It's like, and then also you explain to the editor, this is what you got to do. It's, you got the file, just drag and drop it over here. So like there's like a perfect situation, right? Where it's like I was doing it before, but then it's like, well, that's just wasting everybody's time. And then they're waiting for me, and it's kind of a huge issue. It's a big bottleneck, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'm always very amazed about when my boss always asks me about product time. He's telling me we need a solution for this and that. What's the product time? So how much essentially he's asking me how much time do you need to put aside to work on this? And I can see his time management in his head working, and he's always like, no, if it's 2 days, it's we don't want to do this now. That's too much product time for if we don't know if we actually need this. So let's just build something that just takes 1 day, and that way we know we probably need in the future. Oh, your camera just messed up a little bit there. I hope
Yeah, I
it
know.
restored though. I can see
Yeah,
you again.
yeah. I don't know what happened. I'm gonna kick something. It's very weird. Yeah, and then there's another good one, right? This camera is not quite easily to use, but how much time would it take me to invest to figure that part out? Isn't there a word for that in startup? It's like cost of something.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, cost versus time. I don't know, something like that. I know what you mean.
No, but I thought there was a whole term called cost of something. It's like cost of opportunity or something like that. It's like, well,
Yeah.
how much would it take for me to, how much resource, right? It's better to say resource because, of course, there's always going to be money, right? You can put money to time, but then also, yeah, that's probably a big one. And also, yeah, like, is it better you spend time doing that or better you spend time doing this? What's the outcome?
But sometimes you don't know in the beginning. Sometimes you might be up to something and you don't know it yet. That's the other crux of this situation, really. And that's actually what I think is also really valuable. I think what I said in the beginning, sometimes you just have to dive into something to see if it's worth it or not. And usually in the end, it turns out to be worth it, especially if you're like a small solo dev like me who just who's just messing around a little bit. You always learn something, even if you don't know whether it's actually being used in the end or it's actually being valuable for anyone. You'll always get some sort of return if you spend a little bit of time on something. It's never entirely wasted, in my opinion.
Yes, yeah. But when you guys are kind of mocking out your ideas, right? You start from feature first, or do you ever when you would you start to bring in like some UI mockups? Because Flutter is very much a visual kind of programming, I would say.
That's correct. And I hear a lot of people talking about they are using Flutter to mock up their UI and their designs, or to just they skip the mockup process. I usually don't do that unless it's actually just a button I have to drop into something. I usually try to go Figma, or in case of my day job, Adobe XD first, because I found that when you communicate an idea with words, I might have a completely different idea of how that actually translates into an app design than another person. So I find it very valuable to just have a quick mockup. I'm quicker in Adobe XD than I am in Flutter to just mock up something really quick. So I find it very valuable to just mock up my version of a feature, my idea of a feature, to show to somebody, and then it's very easy to just revisit this, make little variations, talk about whether this is actually what we want to build or this is going into the wrong direction, and only then am I going into Flutter. Partially also because we've built a Flutter web app for quite a while, and I don't know if you've ever worked with Flutter web, but it's painfully slow to reload, so that makes it actually kind of a slow process to work with Flutter web. I've now just I'm trying to get around this problem by making a Mac OS desktop build instead of a web build, which is much faster, which is hot reload. But yeah, that's how we in our startup work on design. So I never just jump into the code on an assumption of they want it to look like this, but I really always try to validate first.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can be quick and kind of mock something up in Flutter, but you're not gonna. The problem is that you're gonna run into issues where people cannot. Once they start to change the screen size dimensions, you're usually gonna run into some problems, especially the more complicated the design. Things don't fit or overlapping or whatever. I just delivered a initial app to a client V1, of course not V1 like finalized thing, but the first delivered prototype or whatever last Thursday, and we loaded up on their laptop screen, but it's actually everybody over here has like a 5K, 4K screen.
It worked on my machine.
Yeah, and then we delivered to them, and they loaded up on their laptop, which is like a 15-inch, and it was like 15-inch Windows from who the heck knows when. Uh, and well, to get an idea like how old it is, there's no USB-C on it, so
Yeah.
nowadays every laptop's got USB-C all over the place, right? So that one, yeah, so that one just didn't work. Like it was like, oh, this is like too big, we
You can only
this
see half
size.
of your design. Yeah, same.
Yeah, and then like the guy programmed it, and I didn't look at the code because I was working more on kind of making sure everybody's working on this thing. There's no issues, like more like a scrum master the time.
Yeah.
And he programmed it so that it's like a specific size, can never get any bigger, can never get any smaller, so he couldn't stretch it out. So it's like, okay, well now we know, because that client is a financial client and they have like a bunch of these. The really weird thing about these traders is they like to have a lot of small screens instead of having one big, like like one that curves, which I think more people would be into. They
Yeah.
like to have about 9 of these small screens all over the place.
Okay, interesting. So they can have all the stocks in their dashboards and statistics all on a different screen.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like at one point, I'm a little bit amazed. The other thing, it's like, wow, what a waste, because now we have these screens that you can just have a bunch of small windows everywhere.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
But that's what I find Flutter is doing a really good job at. All of this responsive design stuff. I always like to joke and say we probably built the first ever production Flutter web app, because we literally, Flutter web was stable, and I think a day later we released our web application. And I, to be honest, I found it really a breeze to create UIs for different screen sizes in Flutter. I come from a web design background. I did lots of HTML, CSS as far as I can think back, really. And of course, Flutter's concept of responsive design is quite a bit different than in CSS. But still, I found it to be, if you know your way around a little bit, I find it to be a very elegant solution to responsive design. You know what I mean? To adapt your design when you shrink your screen or make it bigger.
Yeah, there's that part, but the other thing too is there's another word besides responsive. What is it? Because responsive is dealing about the width. Adaptive. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the one. It's like, well, can I right click? Can I double tap? Do I have multiple finger support?
Ah,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, that's one thing Flutter Web was really bad in the beginning, like especially the right click stuff. My boss still, found a solution to let him right click and open a new tab, but my boss was like, for ages, he was like, why can I not right click, open a new tab with that? Because he doesn't really know that Flutter Web is not exactly a website in a sense that you're used to when you visit a website. So there are a few things that are quite different. And yeah, just getting his head around this concept took a little while to tell him, yeah, if you want to right click open a new tab, I actually have to separately implement this. And it works now, but it just this little thing that seems to be such a small thing that every website has was a bit of a hassle in the beginning. And I think the URL launcher package just recently solved this problem. I think for a while you couldn't easily implement something like that.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I totally forgot because I like to do that. Okay, it looks like hmm, this has been so I was just taking a look at this at the
Yeah.
Flutter Web plugin. Seems like it's been archived back in February. Or maybe they moved it up to somewhere else. Yeah, if you go to Flutter plugins, it's like it's been archived already. It's not read only. I need to check that out. But yeah, somebody was saying that you could just use JavaScript or whatever. You can call it because you can obviously call JS from
Okay.
Flutter. There's a JS context and also HTML. There's some stuff. There's ways that you can do it, but not like if I right clicked, I could do right click and then use that context menu to open it up, right?
Yeah.
People are used to.
Yeah, you can do it now. So if you use URL launcher, that'll work. They have I think it was URL launcher. They have a link widget, which is literally just called link, and that'll give you out of the box the right click open a new tab one. I think the JavaScript solution is actually I might be wrong, but I think it creates an HTML node on the HTML website that then gets clicked via Flutter or something like that. So it's a bit of a workaround. Maybe the link widget from URL launcher is doing the same. I don't know. Might be.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that. I haven't thought about that for a while because I haven't done. We do have one project in Flutter Web, and it works okay. People are happy with it. But yeah, we've definitely found that I think everybody knows already that it's really tough to develop using web because you don't have that hot code reload. And
Yeah, but really so the best solution for this is make sure your app builds on desktop, macOS, or if you're using Windows on Windows, and the development process gets done on macOS, then you get hot reload. Which is a massive time saver because every time on web, every time you save, your app basically flushes the state and starts from the beginning essentially, which is just annoying most of the time. If you have a multi-step form or something, you
oh
have
yeah.
to start at the beginning every time.
Well, I mean, supposedly the stateful widgets, right? They can refresh. Still,
No,
you're
they
talking about
don't. They
only on web.
not on Flutter Web.
Oh yeah, yeah, on Flutter Web, yeah, for sure. That's the issue. Yeah, I wish they could fix that, but I guess it's a fundamental issue that obviously they would have that from day one. But it's like to me, it's like core of Flutter. Like, how do you can't call this Flutter then if you can't develop with hot code reload? That's like one of the key pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. I know they had it on the roadmap, and I just recently read somewhere that for now they dropped it to prioritize something else. So it's not coming anytime soon. So the best advice really is make a macOS build and work with that.
Yeah. So Mac if you're on Mac, Windows if you're on Windows, Linux I guess if you're on
Yeah,
Linux.
a few things are not really interchangeable. So for example, for PlaceMyApp, I had to work with files quite a bit, upload and download files, and the way Flutter Web handles files is quite different from the way that files are handled on Mac or iOS. So I had to basically create different implementations of whether it's currently a Mac build or an iOS build, but it's all possible. So you can just Google that stuff, and I think Flutter, on their website somewhere, I found a guide on how to load different class implementations depending on your platform. And it's quite straightforward.
Yeah, like the only thing that is a problem, I think, is most things are supported across the different platforms, but then web is kind of like a mystery sometimes.
Yeah,
And that's just
absolutely.
one is like it depends on the implementation. Of course, if the plugin has been implemented, or even if the what do you call it the even if Flutter itself has it implemented, which I thought was interesting. We had a guest on before, Buzz, and they were talking about that there's no lifecycle hooks for desktop, which you'd figure that there should be. Yeah, I see your face right now. You're a little bit confused, but we talked about it in the podcast that because they're using Flutter for desktop, and they found that there's no lifecycle hooks. But obviously, you have lifecycle hooks for mobile, but not for desktop.
Do you mean lifecycle hooks as in?
Like when it's been suspended or closed, or just kind of like things like that.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. I haven't come across this problem yet, especially a suspended app. I mean, on macOS, what counts as suspended? If it goes into the background, or like if it's not the active app anymore?
That's a good point. I forgot what their example use case was, but like even for instance, like if you closed your laptop
Yeah.
and then open it back up, that would be kind of some form of suspension, right?
Okay, I get it.
So I forgot what they said exactly, but there was a couple of hooks they want to hook into because it was like, what if because what they want to do is they want to pull in the latest data from like GitHub and Slack and everything else in your calendar.
Hmm.
And obviously, if you close your laptop and open it back up, most likely you're traveling
Yeah.
or it's been some time. I mean, nobody really closes their laptop and opens it up for a second for no good reason. Unless, of course, they change their mind.
So you want to
Yeah, you want to refresh the
refetch
data.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be the hook is to refresh the data once it's been resumed.
True. I have one app that's using this function on iPhone. I don't even remember what I was doing exactly, but yeah, it's a good point. Definitely. But then you can work with a timeout maybe or something like that to say every hour or every day or whatever you refresh.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, there's ways to work around it, but they're not ideal, right? I mean, in the end, I think they ended up having to build something or to work with some other plugin to get that functionality. I forgot what it was.
So there is a it's possible with a Swift app, for example. They
Yeah,
probably have. Okay, then you can one thing I've never done is actually going through platform channels, but I guess you could go through your macOS platform channel and call Swift code in that case.
yeah. I've done a couple of platform channel stuff. Like, for instance, there's a robot that's being sold out here. A lot of people are buying for like it looks like a vacuum cleaner, basically,
Okay.
uh, with um, with like a tray on it or something. I don't know how to describe it. This is a robot called
I
Temi.
might have seen it before.
Yes, yeah.
What's the
So
name?
was it the vacuum cleaner thing that I brought up to you?
So what's the name again?
Temi,
Tammy.
Temi.
Okay.
You see it?
Yes, I've definitely seen it. It looks a bit like, I don't know if you've watched Big Bang Theory, but this robot that Sheldon once uses when he's meeting Steve Wozniak or something, that's a little bit like this one.
Yeah. Well, that's how I described it, right? It's pretty much a blank slate when you get it. But one of the clients I was working with, they're like an exclusive partner of Temi in Hong Kong. Um, and what they would do is, of course, they would sell the robot, but what are you gonna do with a robot that has no basic programming? Like it could follow you, it can go to places, but it still has to start mapping out the area. It can wirelessly charge your phone, which to me was the most useful part out of the box,
Okay, nice.
because like it had so few features, and this is also many years ago too. Um, but what was I gonna say? Like that was like the basic features it had, and so they would say, okay, well, we can help program it for you because it's Android, right? So for that client, we took the Temi SDK because it's an Android based robot. We wrapped the SDK with platform channels, and then we built some Flutter SDK for it. So you could just work in Flutter with it, and you don't need to worry about writing Java or Kotlin or whatever to interface with our SDK. As we just provided like a Dart based interface for it.
Nice. Yeah, and I mean, that's basically embedded programming, kind of. Well, you're on Android here, so it's basically just Android programming, really. But
You know, I had this discussion with a guy, and I was like, "Are you really embedded?" Like, to me, embedded has so many meanings, like, is 'cause to me, I think of more like you're actually writing, like, firmware. To me, that means embedded, but actually, not really, because if you do Raspberry Pi stuff, you're also kind of doing embedded programming to a certain extent. I mean, sure, it's Linux and everything, but it's also a form of embedded programming. So I don't know. It's really an open term, I think.
that's one of the reasons why I went for Flutter. I had back then I had no idea what embedded programming really means, but it just like they pitched it to me as if I could write code for anything with Flutter, and that's basically how it works, right? So you can write code for this robot on Flutter, and that's sort of why I fell for this framework really, and because it seemed to me a little bit easier than Swift UI, Swift, which I've used before.
Yeah, well, I do know there's a lot of people who are looking to use Bluetooth. In fact, I just was on a phone call last week with a guy who uh, they're working on a robot which can somehow follow uh, somebody and basically video them.
Sounds a bit
So
creepy.
made for like yeah, a little bit. It sounds creepy when you say it like that, but in general, like there's so many people who are doing reels
Mm.
and other kinds of short videos, and if you don't have somebody
Oh,
with the cell phone to follow you, you'd like to have something,
if you don't have the Instagram boyfriend.
yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah,
Or
okay.
just remind me of the girl that like. Have you seen this one where this girl walks backwards and does? Have you seen this one? All right, I'll give you.
Maybe.
So like she recorded herself walking backwards. So she had it facing herself. She set up the camera. She walked backwards, turned to this guy who's eating the sandwich on the ground and said, "Hey, can I see your sandwich?" And he was like, sure, and gave her the sandwich. And then she walked backwards around. And then they played it back forwards, and it looked like she
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I
Okay.
saw this homeless guy and I gave him a
Oh my
sandwich.
God. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how real these things are, but it could be. I
Yeah.
don't doubt that people probably do stuff like that.
Yeah.
I always felt it a little bit weird. It's like, oh, I found this homeless guy and I gave him $1 and like I feel so great. It's like, what? Like, why would you film yourself doing that? Can't you just be a good person and just do it? Like
That's
ridiculous.
exactly what I think sometimes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I unsubscribed a couple of people on Instagram and YouTube because I saw this sort of stuff, and then I was just like, no, exactly what you just said. Why do you have to show this to us? Just do your normal content, really. Um, which felt a little bit weird.
I think Mr. Beast actually got into some deal. You know this guy, Mr. Beast?
Yeah, yeah, of course. But he's like known for just pumping money into people who need money, right?
Yeah, but I think there was a big debate because I guess he helped some blind people. Sorry if I'm like oversimplifying it for
Oh,
people listening.
yeah, yeah, I
Did you
saw
hear
that.
about this one?
So
And there
the
was a debate like, is it bad or is it good? And I think there's a case to make for kind of both sides because I think his thing was like, hey, listen, yes, I'm doing it. Yes, I'm getting views, but guess what? The views I get, I'm obviously paying for these things to happen. So it's kind of like I'm doing good. Like I'm not here to, like be a billionaire off of this. I'm actually using the money for good. And to be honest, it's also bringing this stuff out to light. Like, hey, you can do something like this.
which
So
I found
there's,
very interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So I think it depends on how you do it and what is your goal, right?
It might be, I might be completely wrong, but if I recall correctly, the debate might be that his video was called Curing Blindness. And so some people said blindness isn't necessarily something that needs to be cured, which is correct, I guess. If you're born that way, you might not feel a reason for it to be cured. You know what I mean? I think the debate was a little bit around this, but I might be completely wrong. That's how I got it from Reddit, I think.
I think I see it on Wikipedia. Obviously, take that with a grain of salt, but it says January 2023, Donaldson, which I guess is Mr. Beast's name, paid for cataract surgery for 1,000 people. So yeah, okay. I guess legally you are blind, right? But I think you can have some kind of light coming in with cataracts. So yeah, I mean that's a good point. Like yeah, this is where I think that's what it was because it makes sense. This is pretty recent.
Yeah, yeah, I saw it on Reddit, definitely.
Yeah, this is interesting. The feedback is quite interesting when I'm reading this thing because they're saying okay, yeah, like you said, why are you saying you're curing blindness? It's obviously giving cataract surgery to people who need it. Um, Yeah, it's like, well, is your intention to spread awareness or criticism? Because people are saying like, why is it that the American healthcare system is so bad that you need to rely on some YouTuber to help you out, right?
Mr. Beast has to come around and pay for your surgery. Okay, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, there is a Mr. Beast burger I think around the corner from over here. I just remember I should definitely try that. I heard something about that.
Like,
You
does
heard about
it
this?
actually have something to do with Mr. Beast, the YouTuber, or is it just a name?
Some people slap their name on a lot of things that are a little bit questionable. Yeah, there's a MrBeastBurger.com. So I think that must be
Okay,
him.
interesting.
I guess this is him. I don't know. Who else would be Mr. Beast?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're in that subreddit, crappy off brands, but sometimes names are used for very different, very weird things. Hey, there's even a Chris style burger. So I guess I'm gonna have to try this one.
Are you a big fan of French fry?
No, but I'm called Chris. That's why.
Yeah. I was just curious if it matches up with you.
I mean, I do like French fries. They here in New Zealand we have the chip butty. I don't know if you ever heard about this sort of burger. You can buy it at Burger King. So chip butty is essentially burger bread and just fries in the middle. Oh, I think it had bacon, fries and bacon. That's what New Zealanders call a chip butty.
So I was just taking a look at this is the right one. Okay. This is nearby. Huh. I'm so curious about this burger because I heard good things about it.
It looks good.
Yeah. Well, if it clogs your arteries, it must taste delicious, right?
I mean, fries on a burger. What can go wrong, really?
sorry for sorry for the off topic, but yeah, I mean there's a lot of stuff we can say. I think we've been babbling on for like an hour. Um so yeah, we have a lot to say. Like your app is in general is pretty cool. Um I'm I'm I like the idea. Like I said, it's not quite for me at the moment, at least, because of my situation. But I think there was some times when I actually was looking for something like this, and I think I relied on like random templates. I think I found online for Sketch at the time, but I mean that's been several years. I mean, I think I never opened up Sketch. I feel keep paying for Sketch, but I never actually use it.
Yeah, I don't even know if Sketch is really a thing anymore. Now that Figma exists and got so popular. Yeah, I guess really, like I said before, if you guys, anyone who listens is a solo developer and they face this problem and they think PlaceMyApp could solve it for them, then I'm very, very happy about any sort of feedback that I can get that's going to push me into the right direction to make it more helpful.
Yeah, I mean, if people are interested to give you feedback or even kind of help out or whatever, like how can they best get in contact with you?
There is a contact feature in the app itself. I think the landing page might have an email address too. Otherwise, it's just either hello@chriskreymborg.com or hello@chriskreymborg.net. Or you just Google Chris Kreymborg and you'll find my websites and me on Instagram and whatever. You'll find me. My name's out there.
You've only had one. I saw the changelog. It's pretty interesting. I haven't seen too many people have changelogs on their website, but you have a changelog. Yeah.
Yes. So I put it out I'm possibly December last year, sometime this time around. Yeah, and like I said, then I just let it sit there a while, gathered a little bit of feedback, and now that my private situation is a little bit more relaxed again, I will definitely pick up work again.
So I found this a little bit strange. So I see keep a changelog is what you're using, right?
Is it? Yeah, it could be. That's the so they so keep a change log is basically they provide you with a template of what they think. It's an opinionated template of what they think a changelog should look like.
But the funny thing is, you go to check out the keep a changelog thing, and then at the bottom it says, "I went on the changelog podcast." Just feel like very weird to keep talking about changelog over here.
Okay, interesting. Nice. I'm definitely gonna give it a click. Yeah, the changelog podcast. Nice.
You never heard of changelog podcast,
No,
or
have
have
you?
you? Oh, no. Yeah, I do. I used to listen to quite a lot of it. They have a lot of really good guests on there. So I think Flutter people have been on there a couple times. Changelog podcast is pretty decent.
It's not only about changelogs, is it?
It's just about like stuff happening in the community, in the development community. They have all kinds of different guests on there, talk about everything, you know.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like it would be a podcast about changelogs. So, but it's good. It's good. That's good to know. That would be a bit. Yeah.
I think it's obviously just the name, right?
Yeah.
But the Changelog podcast is, I think it's just about, what does it say? Let me just make sure I don't say it wrong. So latest episode is, I don't even know when the hell is this. Should be pretty recent. They I put a couple a week, I think. But they August 8th. No, this is just a random one that they chose.
That would be the last year, I guess.
No, they should, because they have a couple. They got JS Party, Go Time, Founders Talk. They have a couple different shows, but
Oh
obviously
yeah, I can see
the
it.
Changelog is the biggest one, hosted by these two guys, Adam Stakoviak and Jared Santo.
Yeah.
Yeah, latest episode is the 15th, right? So it's a couple days ago, a few days ago from where we are today, and I talked to Adam. Yeah, Zed. So that's awesome. So Zed, I had them on another podcast to talk. It's a new editor. So the guys who wrote remember GitHub had their own editor for a short time, the Atom
Yeah.
editor.
Yeah. I used to
So
use it for a while.
quite a few of the guys who worked on that one left GitHub and wrote a new one called Zed, written completely in Rust.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And it's supposed to be focusing more on the what do you call it? The online, like, cooperative kind of editing stuff. So it looks pretty cool. And they focus a lot on speed too, which is obviously huge, right?
So when you say online cooperative, is it basically like pair programming
Yeah.
over the web? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, it's a native app from what I understand. So because obviously it's hard to do that stuff with you can do it with web and stuff, but I think it's a little bit more difficult. For this one, it's just written with 100% Rust, and they focus on. I think the biggest thing they focus on is like it being fast, like as fast as possible, because if you have a slow editor, like you can feel it, right?
That was one of my main reasons why I switched from Android Studio to VS Code, because it just felt a bit sluggish to me.
Oh, cool. Again, we're gonna drift onto another topic, but it's good to have you on, and I like the PlaceMyApp thing. It's cool. I hope some more stuff comes to it. Yeah, it's a good building block. I feel like there's more you can do with it, but I think that the work I'm thinking about is stuff that would take a lot of time to do.
Yeah, I feel the same, but we'll see how far I get.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for coming on, and hope to have you back again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, really. It was a pleasure.